Around 1900, a photograph captured an Oglala woman. More than a portrait, it opens a window into life on the plains and the ways of her people. Crossing time, the image preserves presence and context. It tells who she was and points to the period she lived in, keeping memories that still guide how we see. Every photo holds a storyline. In this one, we see a Northern Cheyenne woman, photographed in the late 1920s or later. Standing firm, she leans on a cane and shows off a detailed scarf. In her eyes, you can fit whole journeys, memories lit like campfires that still crackle inside. Before we go on, click subscribe and turn on the bell. That way, YouTube knows this content matters and shows it to more people. Descendants of the Shoshone, the Comanche broke with the past at the start of the 18th century. They left the Rocky Mountains and moved across the Great Plains. Along the way, they built alliances, controlled territories, and when they reached Texas, became one of the most influential indigenous nations in the region. In 1901, a photograph taken at the Fort Hall Reservation in Pocatello, Idaho, shows a Northern Shoshone family. The portrait fixes faces, postures, and small gestures, clues to an everyday life preserved in the image. Looking at them, we glimpse bonds, homelands, and the stories of that group on the reservation. In the 1880s, Chief Spotted Tail, or Sinctegleska, rose to prominence among the Brule Lakota. His steady, respected leadership guided the community through a decisive period for indigenous peoples in the United States, when hard choices shaped the future and demanded voice, negotiation, and collective courage. In the 17th century, Spanish explorers called them Pima, but they called themselves Acamel o Odom, river people. They lived in the Sonoran Desert and descended from the Hohokam culture. The image highlights members of this group, photographed by Carlo Gentile in 1870, inviting us to look beyond the label, and the story continues in the waters of the Gila. In 1898, the camera captured Hachasnacha, the Little Chief, a figure from the Arapaho Nation. The portrait, direct and quiet, connects us to a turning point. By observing his features and adornments, we glimpse identity, community ties, and practices that carried into the 20th century in a changing land. Taken in 1870, the photograph shows the war chief's lodge in a Shoshone village in Wyoming. More than shelter, it was the decision-making hub. The image opens a crack into the group's way of life, revealing the village's organization and the relationship between leadership and community, a living memory of a time and place. Shot in 1906, this photograph presents members of the Caddo Nation. Their traditional territory covered areas of Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Texas. Known for their agriculture, they were cautious with outsiders. The image invites us to notice traces of daily life and culture, kept as a record that crosses generations. In 1908, Roland Reed captured the Moose Call. In the scene, an Ojibwe person sitting in a canoe on a calm lake brings a hide or bark to their lips and blows. The precise gesture echoes across the mirror-like water, a traditional practice of the community used to attract or alert between hunting and communication. The ground we walk on holds a wealth of meaning that goes beyond usual understanding. It is inherently sacred. Every fragment, every grain of sand, is infused with the life spirit of those who came before us. Chief Plenty Coups of the Crow tribe. In the early 20th century, Iron White Man joined the famous Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. As the caravans traveled, his presence stitched together scene and meaning. It drew the audience, showcased traditions, and turned lived experience into performance. Between arena and road, his participation brought together spectacle, culture, and art in motion. Around 1901, Fred E. Miller captured the photograph Sisters, part of his effort to document the life and culture of Native peoples. In it, Whistler and Hits the One Who Rides the Gray Horse appear on the Crow, or Apsaluk Reservation, fixing a moment of kinship and shared homeland there. For nearly a century, Long Wolf, an Oglala chief called Shunkmanitu Hanska, fell out of the historical narrative. In 1997, news stories brought his name back into discussion by reconstructing his path. He had died in 1892 in London while performing in Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. In 1926, a photograph shows Bear Bull, a Siksika elder of the Blackfoot Nation in Canada. The eye catches the braid across his forehead. It's not an ornament. It signals his role as guardian of a sacred object of the medicine pipe tradition. The image links past and memory and affirms a heritage that is still alive, even now. Before we go on, click subscribe and turn on the bell. That way, YouTube knows this content matters and shows it to more people. In 1872, the lens recorded an Arapaho man. The portrait, direct and attentive, points to a people who crossed borders, alliances, and breaks. Their path echoes across the United States and to this day forms part of the indigenous tapestry of North America, enriching languages, rituals, homelands, and ways of living. Awe-Ayu, known as Pretty Flower, stood out among the Seneca. In 1908, her story resonated as a symbol of an Iroquoian-speaking people. The Seneca, with a remarkable trajectory, lived for centuries in the region south of Lake Ontario, one of North America's 5 Great Lakes. The Bannock, an indigenous people of the Great Basin, lived for centuries in southeastern Oregon and southern Idaho. On seasonal routes, they followed rivers and game, learning from the arid terrain. In doing so, they built a bond with the landscape and ways of life shaped by adaptation. Over time, they kept practices tuned to the climate and local resources. From Eufaula, Oklahoma, came Cianina Redfeather Blackstone, a voice of the Muskogee Nation. A singer and artist, she turned stages into spaces of affirmation and dialogue across the country. Her activism ran alongside her music, recording struggles and memories that strengthened her people and still echo in Native American culture today. Lucy Thompson, a Yurok leader from Northern California, marked her people's history by recording their memories and customs for the first time. Raised in the tribe's traditions and fluent in English, she turned lived experience into testimony, connecting old narratives to the outside world and preserving the Yurok voice for new generations. In 1953, at the height of her career, Marilyn Monroe passed through Vancouver, Canada. There, she met Chief Joe Mathias, leader of the Capilano Band. The exchange between the star and the indigenous representative gained symbolic force. It brought different worlds closer and marked a chapter of respect and cultural visibility and memory. The photograph Sioux Urchin's Boy and Girl marks one of Huffman's first images, taken right after he arrived at Fort Keogh in eastern Montana in 1880. In a studio, 2 children, possibly siblings, pose for the camera, representing the Sioux community and the story that was beginning to be told. Indigenous peoples understood that crossing close relatives weakened their dogs. To avoid that, they traded animals with other tribes, renewing the lineage and keeping the puppies strong. This community strategy helped shape the wide variety of dogs found in records and history books. The photo, Gertrude Three-Finger Cheyenne, is part of William E. Irwin's collection, 1871–1935. Between 1891 and the early 20th century, he turned his lens to indigenous life, documenting scenes of daily living and traditions. The image invites us to look without hurry and listen to stories etched in light, a slice of an era. Brenda Shad carries Choctaw and Cherokee roots in her story. In her professional path, she became a reference in international fashion over the years. Her presence anchored campaigns and runway shows and took her to the covers of major magazines, where she built a trajectory of impact and recognition. Dan George led the Tsleil-Waututh Nation in British Columbia from 1951 to 1963. As a voice for his people outside the council, he wrote and published poetry and prose. When he turned 60, he made a leap. He debuted as an actor and opened a new phase of life, recognized by audiences and critics, without leaving his roots behind. In the mid-1930s, at a train station, a camera caught a Native American mother with her child. Among suitcases and signs, they watched the comings and goings on the tracks. The photo doesn't give their names, but it reveals routine, care, and an ordinary moment that frozen crosses time and suggests possible paths. Originally from the Great Basin in the western United States, the Shoshone are a native people who, over time, widened their paths. They left their ancestral lands and moved north and east, occupying areas that today correspond to parts of Idaho and Wyoming, where they redrew roots, alliances, and ways of living. We've reached the end of our video. Subscribe to our channel and leave a comment if you like the content. See you next time.